Hello, everyone. Welcome to Falso, Mutis' sort of virtual space and our YouTube channel. And my name is Amanda, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Dylan Waite, a performer and writer based in New York City. And let's just get to it. Tell us a bit about you, Dylan. Introduce yourself to the community.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm a writer, performer, an alumni of the San Francisco Neo-Futurists, and primarily, well, until recently, a playwright, but that's a little harder to be these days.
I'm sure.
But yeah, I'm based in New York. I've spent a lot of time bouncing back and forth between San Francisco and New York, so I've done a bit of theater in both cities, and yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, and then so where did it sort of be? Where you were from originally?
So I'm originally from the Central Valley of California, a town called Fresno, which I think is well known for being the butt of jokes.
Yeah.
From other people in California, in the hip, cool parts of California. But yeah, when I went to college, I was about an hour north of San Francisco. So I spent a lot of time in the city and sort of segued easily to there after school. I went to school for theater, and I've just been doing, experimental independent theater in wherever will have me since then.
Cool. So would you say, where did the sort of interest in theater begin? Was it sort of was your mom and dad happy when you're like, oh, I want to do theater? Or...
They were supportive. Happy maybe is something else, but they were definitely supportive. No, I started acting in, I think, middle school, and when I got to college, everybody was making introductions. Everybody was going around the sort of icebreaker, saying who they were and what they did. And I had just written a play for high school, just like as part of a little project. And everybody was saying actor, and I was like, well, that's stiff competition. So I said playwright, and I've been living with that decision ever since. But really, I think lately I haven't been interacting with theater as much, I guess with the exception of my work with the Neo-Futurists. And thinking about it, I've always kind of been interested in like storytelling and asking questions. I think those of my family who remember me as a child, basically the consensus is like, yeah, you would shut up. And so like, I've always been kind of a storyteller. And to me, I think theater was just one of those paths, and one that was very exciting in the way that it combines mediums and gives you a lot of opportunity to work with different ideas, but like in motion,
Yeah, and I suppose there's a sort of real like liveness and like, I don't know, we all love it, isn't it? Flame to theater. It's right there, it's right now. It could change.
Yeah.
Things could go wrong or right, No. Yeah, cool. And so then, was your introduction to the Neo-Futurists during university, after university? How did that come about?
So the year after I graduated, a friend of mine got cast in the company, and then I very soon after that moved to New York. And then a couple of years later, he showed up and was like, "Come on back to San Francisco, join the company." So I did. I wasn't terribly impressed the first time I saw the show. It's very experimental, and at that point, I was reading a lot of Brecht and Chekhov, and I was like, yeah, this is cute, but it's not like high art. But I think I came around pretty quickly after I joined the company, seeing what was exciting about what they were doing, and how it's different from a lot of the other stuff that goes up.
So I was really interested in getting someone's take on who are the Neo-Futurists that actually practices it, because I think there is a company here in London, I think called Degenerate Fox.
Yeah.
And I've seen bits of what they do. I haven't been able to see a show. I wanted to see a show, COVID-19, didn't get to see that.
Right.
So if you, to us who don't know anything about the Neo-Futurists, if you were going to explain what they do and who they are, how would you explain it?
It's sort of a ramble, but I'll give it a shot. Yeah, so they started in the 1980s in Chicago. That's the original company, is the Chicago company. And they practice non-illusory theater. So, and maybe I'll circle back to that because I think that's the most interesting thing about them. But basically in practice, what that looks like is people aren't playing characters. They're not trying to convince you that they're doing something they're not. So like the big one we always say before the show is, if we're drinking a beer, we're actually drinking a beer. And that sort of has evolved into a whole genre of neo-futurist plays where people get drunk. But yeah, so the big innovation is the show, which was in the 80s, it was Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. More recently, the show we're doing is called The Infinite Wrench. But the thing that makes it so exciting to watch is that it's 30 short plays, and it's timed. So you have an hour to complete this menu, they call it, of plays. And each play is right around 2 minutes, and in between, the audience gets to determine the order that the show goes in. And that looks like there's a clothesline above the stage with the numbers 1 through 30. Each number corresponds to a play. In between plays, the audience will call out the number they want to hear or they want to see, and then the Neos will run and jump and try to grab the number, and then whatever gets grabbed first, that's the next play that goes up. So it's very exciting. It's very kinetic. It's kind of like a sporting event and a game and a competition and theater all rolled into one. And so that's like the flagship show. That's the Infinite Wrench. That's the flagship show of all the companies. I don't know the specifics about what they're doing in London, but I believe it's similar.
Same.
Yeah.
So it's
okay.
Yeah, but well, I don't quite. So let's say clothing line 1 to 30. If I grab number 20 as a performer writer, is there any, do you guys know the breakdown? Like, how do you know what happens in?
Yeah. There's the title of the play is written on the back side of the number, so you have access to that. But yeah, and so I think it's significant that it came out of the late 80s because it very much, the non-illusory nature, the aesthetic as we call it, is very much a holdover of that like sort of Gen X alternative pursuit of authenticity. Yeah. And so the question of like what is non-illusory is debated a lot in the sort of post-show hangouts or the meetings or whatever, what qualifies and what that looks like. And it's different to different people. For a lot of people, it's telling the truth or something like that. For others, it could be engaging honestly in something, or there's a philosophical core there that can be examined from any direction you choose. And I think that's where our most interesting work comes out of, is like, what do those limitations mean and how can we push them as far as possible?
Yeah, I am also interested, I suppose, in the performance aspect. So let's say, obviously, if I've got this glass, I'm drinking water, I'm drinking real water, and you're playing yourselves. Yeah. Within the like theater space. So what it is sort of your real relationships playing out in front of an audience based on a title, or is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We write all the plays. So they're written beforehand. Yeah.
Great.
See, there's a lot of rules, and it's easy to forget the big ones. Yeah. So every week we would roll dice and then cut however many plays we rolled from the menu. So it's 2 dice, one for the Friday night show and one for the Saturday night show. You add the numbers together. So like if you rolled a 7, you cut 7 plays from the menu, and now whoever's in the cast has to bring 7 new plays on the rehearsal to replace it with. I
see.
So Saturday night after the show, the plays are cut. In San Francisco, it was Tuesdays. Tuesdays was the rehearsal. You would bring the new plays. Everybody would sort of pitch their plays, whether it was a text or sort of an approximation of what it would look like based on whatever it happened to be, and then picks were basically you'd go around, everyone would get a pick in turn, and if someone else picked the play, it was in, unless there was some sort of something about the play that needed maybe a second look, or someone had concerns or something like that. But on the whole, if it got picked, it was in. You couldn't be like, well, this isn't quality, I'd rather not do it. It would have to be something extreme, like this makes me uncomfortable, I think we haven't considered this aspect of the play going up. But that's pretty rare. So once those are in, you rehearse the menu on Tuesday, you rehearse it again Friday right before the show, and then it goes up Friday night. So it's a really white knuckle experience. You know, lines drop often, but that's just what happens, and you muscle through it, and that's part of the fun is watching people sort of struggle with this daunting task. And task is I think that's an important word, because that's one of the key ways people try to engage with the parameters of the aesthetic, is by creating tasks that then the performers have to accomplish, and that it like automatically lends like a dramatic element to the play, but it also it sort of shifts the focus, because if you plant on stage and you deliver a monologue about a big moment in your life, you're being honest, but are you being authentic, right? But if you're trying to, just an example from a Chicago play, spit in the air and catch it in your face, now you've created a task that is taking up so much of your energy that like you can sort of be seen, you know, in motion, and not necessarily what you want to be seen, but what you are. And so I think those are two different philosophical approaches that people bring, where it's like, I'm going to be me, I'm going to be honest. A big one is like not asking questions you know the answer to, which can make writing a little tricky sometimes. A lot of times that just boils down to rephrasing it. Rather than asking the question, you just make the statement, and then someone responds as though you'd asked a question, and it's, you know, it's a little Band-Aid. But yeah, when you bring in the task and like start really trying to work through things, it's also very audience interactive, which I guess I haven't mentioned yet. We pull people up on stage, we go out into the audience, ask people questions, you know. It's experimental, it's avant-garde.
So, I mean, it sounds very cool. Scary for, you know, us sort of like, I go and rehearse my bit and just, you know, I'm never myself. But I think how long a menu do you have right now of plays?
Well, it's a little different now. I mean, what do you mean how long a menu? Because it's always 30 plays. It's
always 30 plays. So let's say before COVID-19, you say you have a menu of plays, and then you roll a die, and it says, okay, we have to cut 7 of these, and 7 new ones come on. So is it always, how do you determine the 30 that are already on the menu, the ones for the week before?
We do a round of, it's called keep cuts. Basically, it is what it sounds like. Every play gets called out. If one person says keep, it's in the menu. If nobody says keep, it gets cut. And if after the first pass we haven't cut enough, we have a serious conversation about what we want, and we go back over it until we've cut it. Usually doesn't go more than 2 rounds, but it's happened. But yeah, so that's how that happens. It's all very collective, theoretically collective, but in practice it's more like a collection of tiny dictators. But yeah, so nothing gets cut if somebody doesn't want it cut.
Right. And so they're 2 minutes each. Is there a range of styles, are there completely silent plays? Like, is there a limit, as in there needs to be lines, no lines? What sort of stuff comes up?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's all kinds. Different genres of neo-plays have developed over the years. There is the dance play genre, which is a short dance. There are park and barks, just people coming out, talking about their thing, leaving the stage. Sort of this conversational style of pieces developed where people talk to each other about their personal relationships. Those aren't my favorite, but I've seen some good ones. You know, other things too, puppetry. People have made props out of trash out of, you know, whatever they have. I was doing a show in New York maybe about a year and a half ago, and someone, Dan Mirsky, who was on his way out of the company at that time, had built a sort of, using like spray fog, had made like a rocket ship across the stage. And it was a really exciting play where sort of, in a non-illusory way, the audience all felt like they were transported into space. So it's really, it's whatever. And there are plays that mess with the rules, anti-plays, which sort of change the rules of the show for the night. So it's not a play in itself, but just something that alters the nature of the performance. Maybe trying to think of a good example of that off the top of my head. Another person on their way out of the company, that's I think when all the big stuff happens, made a binder of all of their lines and responsibilities for the night, and gave it to an audience member, and then left the theater. And so that audience member was them for the rest of the night. And those are the kind of like, with
their binder, just like, now you do me.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, that was also New York. If I'm not mistaken, they were responsible for running the rehearsal that week, so they had to deal with the like post-show keep cuts as well.
Poor audience.
I mean, people like it, you know. It's we get interesting fans because of it, because everybody is so earnest on stage, and because we are so inviting. We get a lot of people that get sort of personally or like socially attached to the company. So our big Neo fans are like really excited about whatever we're doing, and really interested in being a part of like the culture that the company has developed.
Cool. And so you said that a friend told you, you know, come join the company, and your initial reaction was, oh, that's cute. But what shift? How did that shift? Like, how did that change?
Oh, I was competitive. I was working my ass off to get these plays put up in New York, and it was no fun. And I was having all of these like problems with spaces, or just like having trouble figuring out a way to get it produced. I don't have like an agent, or like, you know, I'm working in very independent and experimental spaces, and so there's like not a lot of money, not a lot of room. And he's you know, I see him 25 weeks out of the year getting work put up, and he gets to do it, and he's having a good time. And I'm like, okay, I can come off my high horse and like, you know, go have some fun, go make some theater. Yeah. And I don't know, every couple of years, I feel like a little stagnant, and I have to move back across the country. So it was just, you hit me at the right time.
And then obviously once you competitive and start, you know, doing all sorts, what do you find attractive about that style of working, the sort of like 2-minute setup, the constraints, the limits? What about it?
I think it's very like held together. It's got that like sort of held together with duct tape vibe. In college, the same friend of mine, Willie Caldwell, we put up a musical together. But I sent him the script, and he was going to write the music, and he thought I had said we had like 4 months, but we had 4 weeks. So we put this thing together. We wrote it in 2 weeks, and then put it up in 2 weeks. And it was so fun. Everybody was exhausted. Like every morning you would wake up and just go, it's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna pull it off. And then everything came together. It was really gross and hot, and the theater was overcrowded, and people were kind of shaky on their lines, but they were just going for it. And that energy, doing the Neo-Futurists, like performing it, is the closest I've ever felt to that energy, where it's just, everybody's kind of miserable, and sort of like, just like the background radiation is like, I'm too tired for this, but they're committed, and they're like willing to make it work and like figure out creative solutions along the way. And that energy it's really hard to find in a lot of live theater, especially, I mean, you know, there's no need to talk about like mainstream stuff, but like, you know, it's hard to find that sort of willingness to sort of suffer through the art, but in like a fun way.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the most attractive, like the biggest draw is like performing it consistently, getting to see your work go up, getting to have these like low stakes experiments that will be seen, you'll have eyes on them, and then you can say like, oh, that worked, that didn't. You start to realize things about yourself when you're writing under pressure and you're like, I'm writing about food a lot. Maybe I have some, you know, psychological thing going on.
Right, this is a thing, yeah.
Yeah. But then I think what keeps drawing me back and what keeps interesting me about it in the company is this aesthetic question, and the way it sort of relates to the big questions of the universe without actually intending to. I have a lot of fun pushing the limits of the aesthetic, to the point that I have a sort of, when I did a little stint with the New York company after I left the San Francisco company, and one of the last things I did with them was a production of Hamlet. So we stopped the clock, the hour-long time. Oh, there's a timer on stage, so you know how long is left in the show. Yeah, so we stopped the clock in the middle of the 1 hour show and performed a 4 hour script in hand production of Hamlet, and then started the clock and finished the show. The show starts at, the show starts at 10:30, so we wrapped up at I think like 3:30 in the morning. There were 2 people in the audience. At one point, a group had left, gotten drunk, and come back just to see if we were still going, and we were. And it was just to see, so the idea behind it was, are you more yourself if you're performing Hamlet than you are if you're performing yourself?
Yeah.
Like, is the energy it takes for you to embody this other character, and knowing you're going to fail because no character was consistent scene to scene. So every scene someone would be playing someone new. So you could never get a hold of, you could never like one-to-one connect the person with the character. And we had name tags to represent who was who. Props came from the sort of miscellaneous bin in the back of the theater. So whatever we needed for the scene would have to come out of that bin. And we tried to memorize from Tuesday to Friday the entirety of Hamlet, but we didn't. So it was largely script in hand. And so you had people struggling against what was obviously going to be a failure. And through that, I think, you know, you're able to see something real come out that you wouldn't have been able to explore were they given the opportunity to sort of filter all the parts of themselves out that they didn't want on stage.
Yeah.
I had fun. I don't.
Yeah.
It created some practical production problems, but you know, it was, people talked about it, I guess.
Yeah. Also, I think I suppose when you train as an actor, like there's all these things in drama school about, you know, saying yes and just going with it and being in the moment. You know, there's a lot of talk about all of that, and then you start working, obviously, like you gotta hit your mark, and and along the way you find a lot of performers that once this kind of the show is running, they don't want you to change. Like, why did you move over there? Like, you messed this up a bit. And obviously that sort of defeats the purpose of a long time of like training and thinking about drama. So it's cool to do that every week and just say yes. Yeah.
And the other thing, I guess for me, like, when you have people that are like, well, we've got to do it the same every night, and it's like, well, then why aren't you a movie?
Yeah. Do that.
Because I mean, there's a lot of plays trending that way anyway, but that's not what
that's not what we're now. Speaking of your current life, so you were with the San Francisco Neo-Futurists for what, 2-3 years?
About 2 years, yeah.
And then you moved back to New York and sort of
I did a I did a couple months over like maybe half a year with the New York company.
Right.
And then sort of started looking at, I sort of started moving away from theater at that point, started
Yeah.
looking at other avenues. And then, I'm sorry, I cut you off before you even asked a question. I don't know.
That's all right.
What
I
I'm
wanted
answering.
to know that. No, I stayed quiet, but I want to know that now COVID-19 has hit,
Yeah.
and all our lives have changed. So I wonder, what was your life looking like before, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, now, well, actually, so COVID has actually allowed me to be a little more productive than I think I was beforehand, which is maybe not the like typical answer, but
Yeah.
one of the things it's allowed me to do is work with the San Francisco company again, because they brought their show online, and so from out here in New York, I'm able to participate in the show online, and I've gotten a lot of writing done. Because it's that time, I started a podcast.
Fantastic.
And yeah, so, and I sort of went back to basics in terms of like, I started reading Plato and the Bible, and I'm just trying to like crawl my way forward.
Well
But
done.
yeah, it's fine. Some days it's nice, some days it's not. But yeah, so I mean, the precarity is there, and it's it's obviously economically very stressful, but from the like sort of sit and wait aspect of things, I'm able to get a lot done, which is I'll take that as a silver lining, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of us have, tried to run more. I haven't run any Plato, do you know what I mean? Which is also of merit, I'm glad I'm running, but still, I'm glad that you're doing stuff. And also, is this the worldwide wrench then, this show?
Yeah.
That you're a part of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking into this. It is so cool. So how does that work? Do you do it live? Is it on a stream? What sort of stuff are you doing?
All sorts of things. There are live plays, there are recorded videos, audio pieces. I think after a few weeks, maybe the first couple months, people started realizing that like they were theater artists and not necessarily like filmmakers. And so people have started to move into different mediums, quizzes, documents, crossword puzzles, these kinds of things. Primarily, it's I don't know. I think it's still kind of finding its legs because it is such a big challenge to bring the immediacy of what the live show is and try to find a way to recreate that online. And so a large part of the process has been realizing that it's not the live show and figuring out if that's the case, then what is it? And right now it looks a lot like the live show, but so there's still 30 plays. This is a recent addition. For the longest time, it was 10 plays a week and they were all new.
Yeah.
And by plays, I of course mean videos. But lately they've been doing 30. So they're trying to reconstruct the menu from the live show. So it's the 30 plays, and then it's they'll cut however many a week, and then they'll replace them, and it'll sort of live online like that.
Right. And so yeah, I saw videos, I saw you did a sort of audio piece that you sort of described a penis, I think it was.
Yeah.
A full sort of audio experience. What was your first sort of try with this sort of world, like online thing, and how did that sort of shift as the months have gone on?
Yeah, originally it felt a lot like the show. It was like, okay, I'm gonna write every time you join a run of the company in the live show, which usually lasts for about 3 to 5 weeks. Usually everyone once per run does the personal monologue where they talk about the thing they want to talk about, and that's it. So a lot of the early plays in the Worldwide Wrench looked like that. It was the personal monologue because it's hard to interact with people. It's hard to create that kind of energy when we're all on Zoom or something. And so it was the personal monologue set to like whatever you could record given the restrictions of COVID. And there were Zoom plays too that were done live, but not my bag. I don't know. I'm not. I guess part of it was, for me was I think the time difference, just that I wasn't trying to like stay up late on a Friday night to like participate in this West Coast production.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, over time, based on people's like exhaustion with everything that's required to record a video, they just started finding other ways and like seeing how to bring that energy, that non-illusory thing, to the internet in a way that's not competing with like meme compilations.
Yes.
Because that's really the thing is like, okay, so someone's got a like a 1.5 minute long video that's like a small personal reflection, and then it ends with like a punchline. And it's like, in the context of looking for the Neo-Futurists, that's good. But then if I'm on the internet, suddenly I don't have to be looking at you. And that takes away a lot of what we're able to do in the live show. And so it's like, it's really just been, you know, grappling with the practical limitations of the new form.
Yeah.
I started, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I personally started doing audio pieces because I was tired of filming my apartment. I was tired of looking at it.
Yeah, but they work really well. I was just there like, yeah, I'm game. So, do you know what I mean? I was like, I thought it was really, and is this why you started a podcast, or was that completely unrelated?
Actually, this was a byproduct of it. I discovered a game maker that has some games on the PlayStation Marketplace that are all terrible. They're like, without getting into specifics, they're very bad. They're made very poorly in a way that is very obvious, and it is clear that their intention is to flip some cheap purchased assets and like sell them on the marketplace to like scrounge out some money from whoever's, you know, accidentally going to buy this thing.
Yeah.
But there is a name attached to these games, and it appears in the credits under like each title in the credits, sort of like Tommy Wiseau in The Room, if you're familiar with that at all. Yeah, so I started looking into this guy, and it led me to a sort of down a rabbit hole of like trying to figure out who this guy was, locate him. I like was looking up P.O. boxes in Hollywood, and like his name was Brazilian, but like there was a Brazilian restaurant across the street from the P.O. box, and like I was trying to figure out who this guy was. And at this point, I wasn't doing the show in San Francisco, and a couple of my friends in the company got wind of what I was doing, and so we did a live play where we played one of his games and sort of investigated the lore around this man. His name is Gilson Pontes. So out of that, we were like, oh, we have a fun time talking together, and so the podcast just sort of developed naturally out of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
What a good COVID story. Sorry, the beginning of a podcast. So what is where can people see your work, and what's next? What are you up to? What's going on?
Okay, you can see my work at let's see, I should have written these down.
That's all right. We'll obviously link them onto here, but let us know, is it online? What's
yeah. You can see my work with the Neo-Futurists at sfneofuturists.org. I think I still have some things in the menu as we're doing this right now. If not, they have a YouTube page, SF Neo-Futurists, which has got all of the Worldwide Wrench plays. So if you look for My Stupid Mug, you can find the ones that I did. What else? You can listen to my podcast, Is This Pinball, on any of the podcast apps, or just Google it. You can find it. It's nobody else's
pinball. Great.
Yeah, the premise is we every week we dissect a video game, a piece of like pop culture or something, and decide whether or not it's pinball. We did, lately we've done like Cats. We talked about the musical and the movie. We talked about literature. We talk a lot about video games, just whatever we're dealing with at the time. And we decide whether or not it's pinball.
Cool.
So that's where you can find that. Yeah, that's my online footprint.
Yeah, cool. And so are you writing a lot? And if you're writing, is it plays? Is it novels? Is it what's...
Yeah, I'm working, actually, my partner Bea and I were working on a script that we were looking at going down to Puerto Rico and shooting right before COVID hit. So we're looking at maybe ways to adapt that. I've got a couple of collaborators. We are currently reading through Shakespeare chronologically, and we're gonna see if something will come out of that. We're not sure yet, but it's percolating.
Yeah, yeah. It's there, it's in the back burner, yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I'm just, you know, taking it one day at a time.
Yeah,
Can do.
yeah. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Dylan.
Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure for me. We're gonna link up all your stuff because it's really, really cool. I watched most of it. And I think, and hopefully, best of luck with all your work. And I'll be listening to your podcast, and hopefully so will all the Resquicio community. So thank you so much for coming on to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.